Hi, future Tiger parents. This is Scott Boggs, the principal at Terrace Hills Middle School. I hope this video finds you safe and healthy, you and your family and your students. We had originally scheduled to have a parent night for incoming seventh grade parents like yourself that in early May. And we were going to show you a PowerPoint, give you a bunch of information about what middle school is like, what you need to know about middle school, and give you the opportunity to ask some questions. Obviously, due to the school closures, we weren't able to do that. So I thought I'd make this video, still go through the PowerPoint, give you some of the information that we were going to give you that evening. And hopefully it'll give you some things to think about as your student looks to transition into middle school here at the end of the summer. So let's get started. A couple of things before we get started about this. I wanted to kind of let you know. I'm not going to get into a lot about what school might look like this fall. I know everybody's wondering that at the time of me making this video. I don't know yet. Our district's coming up with plans, but we have to wait for guidance from the state with respect to what that's going to look like. Okay. So some of the things in here will only really pertain to if we come back normally, but I'll kind of address those as we go through. All right, so how is middle school going to be different from elementary school? I would say the transition from elementary to middle school is the biggest transition that a student will make from one grade to the next in their entire 12-year career in education. One of the big changes, obviously, is a schedule change. As elementary students, they had basically one teacher all day. A couple of our elementary schools rotate between sixth grade teachers. So some of our students coming in have a little bit of experience with having more than one teacher. But one of the big differences is going to be that they're going to have 7 different teachers. I kind of read this funny article that said that imagine if you as adults, you went to work on Monday morning and went to your place of work, wherever it is that you work. It could be a desk, an office, construction site, whatever. Let's say you went there and all of a sudden you went and there was 300 or 400 different employees. So all the people that you worked with normally were there, but there was tons more people who you didn't know all of a sudden showed up to work. So you sat down at your desk or wherever it is that you work. You started doing your work. And after 48 minutes, a bell rang and you had to pack your entire desk up. And you had to move to a different desk and you had to unpack your desk. And then when you unpack your desk, you had to do a totally different job for the next 48 minutes. Then after 48 minutes, you had to pack up your desk again and move to a different desk. And every time you moved desks, you had a different boss. So even though middle school is not quite like that, just kind of put yourself in your kids' shoes when thinking about the big shift in how their logistical day is going to go from 6th grade to 7th grade. Adaptability is another big thing. As we mentioned, they're going to have 6 or 7 different teachers throughout the day. So they're going to have to adapt to different classrooms, different structures in the way in which the teachers manage their classrooms. Self-motivation is a big change. One of the things that we look at with students with middle school is start to give them the independence that they really do want. They're going to be expected to have an increased responsibility, both in the classroom with respect to classwork. They're probably going to have more homework than they did in elementary school. They're going to have their own PE locker, and they're going to be responsible for taking care of how that works and the stuff in there and the lock and things like that. They're going to be responsible for staying after school for tutoring. Of course, they should let you know that. And if they're involved in any extracurricular activities, there's responsibility with respect to those types of things as well. So increased responsibility or increased self-motivation. And then finally, concentration and distractions. So this is the time where those increase for students. We have 5 elementary schools that feed into us. So imagine your student is used to the fellow sixth graders that they grew up with at their school. But when they come into 7th grade, 80% of the 7th graders are going to be people that they've probably never met, who are also going to be coming from schools that they were comfortable with the people they're not with. So while there's great opportunity for students to gain new friendships, there's also increased opportunity for distractions, for conflict. So that's something we're going to want to be aware of as well. Okay. One of the most important things you're going to want to pay attention to and have access to when your student is in middle school that you probably didn't have access to, didn't use hardly at all, maybe a little bit, is the parent portal. So the entire district uses a student information system called Q. It used to be called Zangle. So if you hear people refer to Zangle and Q, they're the same thing. And that's how our teachers use for their grade book, for attendance. It's what we in the office use for behavior as well. So every student's going to get a login and a password where they can log in and check their grades, attendance, and behavior whenever they wish. And as parents, you can get access to a parent portal login where you can do the same thing. You can log in under your kids if you want to, if that's easier. The benefit with parent portal right now is that if you have multiple students in the district at multiple schools, you can log in and you'll see all your students there. Whereas if you just logged in under one of your students' logins and password, you'd only see, of course, that student's information. And eventually our IT department is looking to increase the usage with parent portal, where you'll be able to make changes to the emergency card on those things, do different types of enrollment things, stuff like that. So we'll get information out to you this summer at the scheduled pickup day, if we have that, and depending on what that looks like. But we'll get that information out to you, and it's always on our website as well on how to access that, so that you can stay on top of things. And make sure you do that. I know my own student, I'm always checking his and asking him about missing assignments, about grades, about how he's doing, and those types of things. So it's really important for you to be able to stay on top of your student with respect to the information that you need. Your kid might not like it, but that's just the way it is. You're doing your parent job. Communicating with our teachers. I have 42 teachers, 3 counselors, and a librarian, in addition to a whole, office staff as well. But with respect to teachers, the easiest and best way to communicate with them is via email. Obviously, during distance learning, that's pretty much the only way you could probably communicate with your students' teachers. So I think we've all become experts at communicating via email. But it's the easiest way for teachers as well. Even when we go back under normal circumstances, just keep in mind they're teaching all day. So if you call them and leave a voicemail, they might not get that voicemail until the following day. Whereas email, they're probably checking it during passing periods really quickly, or they might check it before and after school. And they'll be able to get back to you really easily. There's a couple of ways. You can go to our school website, and on the Our Staff Directory tabs, you can find all the teachers' website or email addresses. An easier way is in Parent Portal. When you're in there and you're looking at the different classes, there's a direct link to each of the teachers' email in there as well. So if you happen to be in there and you have a question about an assignment, and you want to ask the teacher because you asked your student and you feel like maybe you're not getting all the information, you can just click on that link and email them really quickly. You're also welcome to set up a parent-teacher conference. Those would be if we have, more in-depth things to discuss. It's more than just a quick question here and there. You can call and set those up. And then, of course, if you have a concern about a teacher or any kind of interaction with your child that's outside of the classroom, we always encourage you to talk with either myself or my assistant principal, Mr. Tasaka. Obviously, we encourage you to talk to teachers if it's a situation going on in a classroom, because the teacher is going to be the one that's going to be able to give you the most information with respect to what's going on in there. But if you can't do that, or if it's something outside of the teacher's information set, then you're always happy to call me, set up a meeting with me, or email me. Again, email is the best way to get a hold of me, and you'll get a quicker response. But if we need to meet in person, I am happy to do that. All right, student involvement and parent involvement. So study after study has shown that students are more successful in school, both academically and from a socio-emotional perspective, if they get involved in activities outside of the actual classes that they're taking. So at Terrace Hills, we have a number of clubs that meet after school. We have tutoring that happens after school. And we have sports that we participate with against the other middle schools throughout the year. Now, this is one of those things where I don't know what these things will look like or if we'll have them as we go back in the fall, depending upon the guidelines from the state. But eventually, we're going to get those back if we don't start out with them in the fall. And it's a great opportunity for kids to get involved. They make new friends. They start to, flesh out their interests that they have about different things. And we have a lot of fun with those. And then, of course, as parents, we want you to get involved as well. We have a school site council, just like every other school does, and we will be having those elections in August. If we don't go back to school physically, we'll figure out a way to have those elections. It's going to be a little more challenging. But I have a great school site council, a couple of carryovers members from last year. So we will make that happen one way or another. We also have an ELAC committee as well. And the ELAC and the school site council committees meet during the day, back to back. I think next year we're scheduled to meet on Tuesdays, but if we have to do those virtually, then we can have a little more flexibility with respect to that. But all that information will be put out on our website and in the information packet that you'll get schedule pickup. Again, if we have those types of things pending the guidelines from the state on what those types of things might look like. And then we also encourage you to attend parent conferences. We have those twice a year, once in October and once in April. And then we plan to have some various parent night activities that we'd like to have, again, pending the guidelines from the state. So we encourage you to participate in those whenever possible. And as those come up, we'll get information out. We'll send the phone calls and emails out. We will put those activities on the website on our calendar as well. Okay, supporting your child at home. These are things that I'm sure most of you already know about and are not necessarily just exclusive to middle school. But obviously, academics are an important thing. Every student will get a student agenda or a handbook. And a lot of my teachers use that and require students to put in the agenda, what they did for that day, what their homework is. So one of the things that you can do every day when your kid gets home, we all know when you ask your kid what they do at school today, they respond nothing. And we know that's not true. So make sure that you dig deeper. Bug them with questions. Ask them to get their agenda out. If they're not writing in it, ask them why. That's when you can start to touch base with those teachers and make sure that you're getting that information you need. Require your student. Say, as long as your kid knows that you're going to expect them to have that written in their handbook, and you're going to check it every night, then they're going to start doing it. Ask them questions about what they did that day. Don't let them off the hook with just saying, "Oh, we did some math problems." Ask them about the math problems. You don't need to understand what the math problems were about, but if you know that they can kind of explain what's going on, then you know that they have paid attention, they're probably on top of things. If in English, ask them what kind of books or stories they're reading. Literacy, obviously, have your child read stuff, 15 to 20 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week. Reading is obviously incredibly important for everybody, especially for students this age. They often don't like to read, but if they can read anything, I know I myself am not a big book reader, but I read articles on the internet all the time, articles about things that I'm interested in, sports, politics, the news, things like that. Reading is reading. It doesn't have to be a 400-page novel. Social emotional. Talk to them about their day. Ask them about their friends. Ask them if they have had any issues. Be upfront with them. Tell them that in middle school, there's probably going to be some times where kids are going to say mean stuff, or they're going to hear things. And if they know that you will be open to hearing about those types of stories, then they're going to be more likely to tell you when things are going on at school that you should either take action with or let us know. Encouragement, obviously everybody needs encouragement, especially middle schoolers. Middle school is the time where kids can kind of make mistakes. Not that grades don't count, but I tell middle school kids all the time, no college or post-secondary school is ever going to ask for your 8th grade grades, for your 7th grade math grade. All right. So grades are still important, but they're not the end all be all. So a lot of 7th graders come in and they struggle that first semester because of the changes that we talked about earlier with this, just a big transition and difference in terms of the schedule, the distractions and things like that. So this is the time to encourage them that even if they got off to a bad start in 7th grade, that they can turn things around. It's all about establishing habits. I would tell my son when he was in middle school constantly, middle school is about establishing good habits for high school and beyond. And then, of course, involvement. Have your kids help around the house with chores. Teach them that there's more to life than just getting good grades and doing their homework. That's important too, of course, but so that they can become more well-rounded. And I'm sure you've already done that, even when they're in elementary school. All right. How will my kid be different? We touched on this a little bit. They're going to be more independent. They're probably going to prioritize their friends over you, even though they still love you to death. Friends are become to be the most important people in their lives. Friends and their associates at school that they hang out with are very, very important to them. They will make decisions based upon friendships, unfortunately, because sometimes it doesn't turn out to be a good decision that they made at times. But they will make those decisions because how their friends view them becomes more important than how their family and parents and siblings view them. So in connection to that, they're going to become less reliant on you. They're going to not want to tell you what's going on. That's where you have to be kind of a pushy parent to make sure that you are staying on top of them. Make sure that you let them know that they can understand, that they can tell you anything, that they can tell you about problems that are going on, that they're not going to be afraid to make some mistakes here and there because it's a learning process. They're less willing to tell you everything, and they're more apt to view the world from their own perspective. So middle school kids will do some crazy things and make some odd decisions. And I see it every day. And I wonder, how could they possibly have done that? What were they thinking? And I'm sure you have done that with your child as well at times. But it's literally where they're at in their brain development. For the most part, it's kind of difficult to blame them sometimes for the decisions they make, because their brain development is such that they become very self-centered and they tend to see things from their own perspective. And it's difficult for them to put themselves in other people's shoes. It's not because they're mean or selfish and they don't want to. It's just the way their brain is developed. It's literally very, very challenging for a lot of them to put themselves in other people's shoes. So a lot of times kids will come up and tell us their version of a story, and it'll be totally different than someone else's version of the same story who saw the same incident. And then we'll go back and forth and we'll kind of figure out that, oh, yeah, the stories were really kind of the same and they both all saw the same things. But it's that their initial telling of the story was from their own perspective. And that's just the way they're at, where they're at in their brain development at this point. So buckle up. Okay, so obviously a very important topic. Bullying and harassment tends to increase during the middle school years. And I've talked about a number of reasons why. The distractions become increased. The opportunity for, we said the opportunity for friendships increases, but the opportunity for conflict increases. They're gonna meet people that they don't necessarily get along with. Combine that with the fact that, as we mentioned, their friends become the most important people in their lives, and they will do anything to defend their friends. And so if someone says something about their friends, that's incredibly important for them, and they're going to be just as offended pretty much as if that person had said something, the same thing to them. So a couple things I want to talk about with respect to bullying and harassment. First of all, the difference between bullying and harassment. Bullying rarely takes place at schools. Now, I'm not trying to dismiss the fact that it doesn't in some situations, but bullying is the technical definition of bullying is that it needs to be very severe. It has to be persistent, so it has to continue a number of times. It has to be one-sided. And so what happens a lot at middle schools is rarely bullying. Now, we get a lot of harassment. Okay. Now, we don't condone either one of them, and we always want students to report any type of harassment or bullying that they are experiencing or that they witness as well. And we'll always follow up on that. Social media is a huge concern. If I could ask parents to do one thing, it's to be very, very cognizant of their students' social media presence. Some of you probably don't allow that at all. And that's great, although it's going to happen at some point. So you might want to maybe, let them experience a little bit of it. But there obviously are tons of apps that you can have where you can monitor it. It's your phone, you bought it, so you get to make the rules when it comes to that. But just make sure you're staying on top of things, because kids will do all kinds of things to avoid parents checking in on their social media. They will create separate accounts that you don't know about. You take their phone away because they got in trouble, and you confiscate their phone for a couple of weeks. They will use someone else's phone at school to log in and do their social media accounts if you're not keeping up on that. But social media is by far and away what causes the most problems in terms of student conflict. So make sure you're overseeing their social media. Make sure you ask them if they have any issues. If there's stuff is going on, ask them every day if you have to, if there's something going on, especially if you sense that there's something going on. Since their mood changes, they're unhappy about something, they seem to be distressed or angry about something that's going on. It could be that they're having a conflict with respect to harassment at the school. And the other big important thing is to make sure that they report things immediately. I'm talking 90+% of our harassment issues, what happens is they report it, but then we find out that it started 3 weeks ago. And not only did it start a long time ago, but it's gone back and forth. So both sides have said things they shouldn't have said, either through social media mostly, or in person at school, or through friends. And so one of the problems is that when we first learn about it and it's already been 3 weeks, it's hard to go back and try to figure out who said what. Friends have gotten involved at this point, and friends have taken sides and friends have probably said something uh, at this point. And as we talked about, friends are so incredibly important at this stage of students' lives, that it becomes incredibly difficult to conduct that conflict mediation after 3 weeks of back and forth, back and forth. So make sure you monitor their social media. Make sure you report things immediately. All right. We always follow up on these types of things. Sometimes when we follow up, there's no social media stuff. We can't prove somebody said something. So we'll give warnings, depending on what they said, of course. But we'll give warnings to everybody and just let them know that it needs to stop. Okay. Social media stuff, also make sure that you print things out or screenshot them. Because if we don't have that proof that it wasn't, that we have there printed out or on screenshot, that we can see it and read what's going on, then it might as well have not happened. And so it makes it difficult for us to follow up and issue any consequences if things are warranted. At the end of the day, we're always going to follow the California Ed Code. We're required to do that by law. And there are Ed codes in there that pertain to bullying and harassment. And we will always follow those to the letter of the law. And then obviously our ultimate goal is to be proactive and try to get students to not engage in these types of activities. So there are a number of things that we do. We have an advisory period in the mornings, every day except Wednesday, which is 16 minutes long. And we do a lot of social emotional stuff during that advisory period. We have our PBIS team runs various campaigns throughout the year during advisory. I have a web crew classes that are 8th graders that will run the 7th grade orientation that hopefully we can have this year. And they actually go in and teach a lesson to all the 7th graders during advisory. So your student will be in an advisory class and they'll be paired up with 2 web crew leaders that every Tuesday they'll get to see in advisory, teach them a lesson. The lessons are centered around, getting to know you types of activities, putting yourselves in other people's shoes types of activities, having empathy for other students who might be different than you, how to react when someone does something you don't like, whether it be call you a name or say something that's hurtful, things like that. And then Web Crew will also run lunchtime activities throughout the year. ASB will do some activities throughout the year to address these things. And I also have a wonderful counseling department that will also do lunchtime activities centered around this. And the counselors are also willing to talk with students about any problems they might be having in this area at any time. And they will also do a lot of conflict mediation surrounding harassment as well. So again, I'm going to say it again because it's incredibly important. Oversee their social media, ask them questions, and please make sure they report things right away. All right. There are probably a lot of other things I could say, and you probably have some questions as well. But I just kind of wanted to end on my own experience. So I'm finishing my 5th year. I just finished my 5th year as principal here at Terrace Hills Middle School. And I was lucky enough to start my experience at Terrace Hills Middle School with my own student being a middle schooler himself. He's in another district where their middle school is 6, 7, and 8. So his 3 years of middle school were my first 3 years at Terrace Hills. And so it was quite amazing and interesting to see how he changed from elementary to middle school. I have 23 years experience working in education, and I thought I knew kids until my own kid got into middle school and started doing some of the things that I thought he would never do. He's a great kid. Otherwise, love him to death, just like you love your kids to death. But he did some things, not, horrific things, but he did some things that really surprised me as he got into middle school. And kind of opened my eyes that I needed to do some of the things that I am encouraging you to do. Keep a closer eye on social media, keep great communication with the teachers, and those types of things. So he's just finished his 10th grade year. He's all good to go. We survived the middle school years, and you will too. So the final thing I just want to say is, I have a really great staff. I know that middle schools can sometimes get a bad rap because there's a lot going on, and all the things we just talked about throughout this presentation. The kids are entering and into a time in their lives that is very challenging for them. And it's a huge transition, and it's a tough time for them. And my staff understands that, and they're always open to work with you. Please make sure that you reach out to teachers, counselors, myself, or my assistant principal if you're having any problems or any issues as we move into your student's 7th grade year. So I'm going to close with that. I hope that you have a great, healthy, and happy summer. I hope that we're able to start the school year with some semblance of normalcy, though I fear that it won't be fully normal, but eventually we'll get back to normalcy. But in the meantime, I wanted you to have this information. We'll be getting information out to everyone probably in the beginning of July, once we have plans firmed up on what the school year is going to look like, and we'll get all that stuff out as far as important dates, things that you need to know about, things that you might need to attend, paperwork, all that important stuff. We'll get out there in July once we get information from the state and have the information that we need, that our district needs to make good decisions. In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. You can find my email on the website. And we look forward to seeing you in August as parents of new 7th graders.